back with more NBA coverage, and there are a few more updates here, including a very major one near the end of this. To start things out, yesterday Tim Hardaway Jr. would sign a 1-year deal with the Nuggets yesterday, and it does make perfect sense for them. We're talking about a player in Tim Hardaway Jr. who last season started all 77 games for them and averaged 11 points per game on 40% shooting from the field with 36.8% shooting from deep, which is around his career average at 36% shooting from that range of the floor. And that's ideal for them. Although Christian Braun did emerge as the most improved player candidate last season and was honestly one of the best pieces they had outside of Jokic and Jamal Murray, he's still not a great three-point shooter at this stage of his career. He's mostly been a transition offense player who can give you that hustle on both sides of the floor, can lead those fast break opportunities and finish them very well, and just gives you that consistent energy that most of the other players on the Nuggets down the stretch of the season did not have to this point. But he wasn't an initiator of true offense. He couldn't create his own shot whatsoever. He had to be set firmly in a still stance to get shots off in his case. And Tim Hardaway Jr. is largely going to be the same way, but with that threat of the outside shot, if you need him to step in a bit and get you some buckets that way, he's more than good for that occasional form of offense at times. And any boost of offense that you can get off the bench, you will certainly take for a Nuggets team that has continued to, for the last few years, struggle whenever Nikola Jokic is off of the court to take a rest. That's been the issue. And I guess the Nuggets are trying to find the best ways they can to, again, maximize that ability and that depth on their team while maintaining a low cost for these players. I'm not necessarily a fan of the Valanciunas trade, but after thinking about it a little bit, I can understand it. He is still, whenever Jokic is going to be out, he's going to be that big frame that teams do have to kind of game plan for in some capacity. And now you add Tim Hardaway Jr. to the mix. Now, again, he started all 77 games last season. He's going to be a bench player in this system. I feel like they may want to give Christian Braun some reins as a starter this season. I just strongly feel that way. The progression has been evident every single year he's been in the league, and I feel like they want him to embrace that next step and take it. So that means that Tim Hardaway Jr.'s role would be as the sixth man, which he hasn't had a problem with at all in his career. I mean, his last season as a true sixth man saw him play 67 of his 79 games for the Mavericks in the 23-24 season off the bench. And he had 14.4 points per game in that role on 40% shooting from the field with 35.3% shooting from deep, en route to a 9th place finish in 6th Man of the Year voting. So he's more than comfortable with that. The problem with Tim Hardaway Jr. is that he will have stretches because he is certainly a microwave shooter in every sense of the imagination. So there will be games where he goes incredibly cold, and there will also be games where he doesn't seem to understand that it's not his night, and yet he'll try to be the primary option on offense at times, and the team that he's on falls in a complete and total drought because of him trying to expand his role when it's not called for. That is the one thing I would truly worry about when it comes to him. But other than that, this is a good signing. It's a rental, and I'm sure that he would be departing in the season following this. But if he can give you that nice boost of shooting and overall offense off the bench, you will certainly use that to your benefit this season. Because you're in this to try to maximize the championship window you have, as long as Jokic is healthy in performing at the historically great level that he has been playing at over the past half decade, you can say. Now, the Cavs would sign Larry Nance Jr. to a 1-year deal. Well, it makes sense from the perspective that he played 4 seasons there previously, and although his career hasn't necessarily gone the best route, he has had his most success as an individual player in Cleveland. Obviously, this team looks vastly different than his Cleveland teams, especially when you get into the couple of years without LeBron that he spent there. It is tremendously different. Some of these players that are there currently might have been brief teammates with him. I think Dean Wade might have been. So there is a little bit of familiarity there with the current team and him. And, it also makes sense from the standpoint that he is a hometown kid. He's from Akron, so it's a bit of a homecoming and a general reunion at the same time. In terms of what he can actually provide for the team, I mean, he's always been a player who gives you dynamic energy off the bench, especially with his athleticism. And he can also play some solid defense for you from time to time. Though last season the Hawks weren't able to really get the most of that. He was injured for most of the season and appeared in just 24 games, starting in just 3. But even then, he averaged 8.5 points off the bench on 51.6% shooting and 44.7% from deep, which would have been by far a career high. But again, you could take that with a grain of salt due to the limited sample size. Still, if you're getting that kind of production from him on a team that already has wings like Max Strus and Dean Wade there at the moment, and other guards like Sam Merrill, Tyrese Proctor, and the like, they're just continuing to bolster their bench depth in the best way that they can. But again, with all this, I don't know about DeAndre Hunter's role. I feel like it could increase given the moves that they have made. He could still be a bench player, but at the same time, moving on from Isaac Okoro, who was occasionally getting starts even though his role was diminishing. I don't know. It feels like he would assume that mantle in that specific situation. And I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that. I'll tell you that right now. Yesterday, the Pistons would sign former Heat small forward Duncan Robinson to a 3-year, $48 million deal and trade away Simone Fontecchio to Miami. In the craziest sense imaginable, they're literally trading shooter for shooter, but one team clearly won this deal. And I think everyone who approaches this from a logical standpoint knows who the winner would be here. Because I just don't understand what the Heat are doing. So you're telling me over the course of this entire offseason, and even at the trade deadline earlier in the regular season, you value Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Haywood Highsmith. Pelle Lawson, Keyshawn Johnson, and all of the other current forwards that they have on this team. You value every last one of them over an established sharpshooter in Duncan Robinson, who might have had a drop-off last season, but he still had one of the best percentages from deep in the league, and especially at his position. Like, it just took you one season to move on from the person that you got out of undrafted free agency and who has made a name for himself in this league as a person who does command that kind of money. Like, even if you think he was dropping off a little bit, the numbers don't lie. He's still in that upper echelon of sharpshooter when it comes to others around the league. Like, literally. Oh, not even Keyshawn Johnson. But still, all of these other forwards. We're talking Haywood Highsmith, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Pelle Lawson, Nikola Jovic, Kyle Anderson, and Keyshawn Johnson. A couple of those guys are rookies. But, like, really? And you not only value those guys over Duncan Robinson, but they were still trying to make moves with Andrew Wiggins, trying to move on from him after they got him at the trade deadline. What's up with, like, I guess they are trying to get a little younger, but if that's the case, for real, what the hell are you taking on Simone Fontecchio for? Like, that's your play? You allow the Pistons to engineer a move where they get back a player who is arguably better in Duncan Robinson and give him reasonable money for the position that he's in. I mean, Duncan Robinson split his games off the bench and as a starter last season, which could have shown signs of potential instability and a desire to phase him out of the rotation when looking at it that way. If you can't necessarily find a place for him on the team. To that extent, it's a little understandable. But what place are you going to find for Fontecchio on this team? You want to question Duncan Robinson's defense? He's much worse at defense. And when we factor in what's going on with Fontecchio, one of the biggest gripes with Robinson's game is that he's not necessarily that much of a playmaker, and yet even he managed to get other teammates involved on far more occasions than Simone Fontecchio ever has in his entire career. Like, this man quite literally averages just 1.1 assists per game and came off of last season averaging just 0.9 assists per game in 75 total games without starting a single time, of course. Like, how the fuck do you downgrade from a starting level sharpshooter to a player who, on a team that quite frankly needed as much shooting as they could get, found himself getting phased out of the lineup by better shooters like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley at every turn? He was not even remotely close to an important player. Like, there's no way you thought that Duncan Robinson was that expendable. That's just bullshit to me. And then you really come away from this thinking that you won the deal and that you got the better player. Fontecchio, even if he didn't start a single game at all, we literally showed you an example with Tim Hardaway Jr. being able to find that role anyways on that team. and on other teams in years past as a potential sixth man, putting up double-digit points per game. This man, Fontecchio, averaged just 5.9 points per game last season and shot 40.2% from the field on 33.5% shooting from deep. It's a downgrade in every sense of the imagination. He's not even remotely sound when it comes to the offensive side of the ball outside of shooting whatsoever. And he's not even trying to master any of those other skills. He doesn't even do them well at all. And then, you're bringing him in for more shooting when he is a below league average sharpshooter. Meanwhile, in a down season for Duncan Robinson, he still managed to get just barely under 40% shooting from the field last year. So what the fuck are we talking about here? Like, I genuinely don't understand this from the Heat's perspective. And you know what? They can take that shit on and just that's their problem now. The Pistons absolutely won this in a landslide. And if we want to make this an age thing as well, like, Fontecchio is 29 and Duncan Robinson will be going on 32. There's not that much of a fucking difference there. Like, you could have kept him around for the long term. It makes no sense. But the Pistons, again, they're getting a good one, which makes things even more difficult for Malik Beasley in this case. I'm just going to keep going back to it because you're adding all of these sharpshooters, and it feels like they are all elite too. I mean, well, Karis LeVert can be a sharpshooter at times, but he's more of a player that can just lead your offense in that second unit. And Duncan Robinson is certainly a sharpshooter. So, you lose out on Tim Hardaway Jr. for the short term, and you secure one who was on the same par with Hardaway Jr. as Robinson on a 3-year deal. That's definitely a great move from their perspective. But as I continue to say, we just got to continue watching this Malik Beasley thing, because if he is found to be not guilty, they have a very great bench unit. We're talking LeVert as the potential point guard in this situation. And then you have Malik Beasley as a shooting guard still, and Duncan Robinson as a small forward. You like that? That's a good one. I guess there are cases in which he could start, though. I mean, like there are lineups that they could deploy in which Duncan Robinson would start on this roster. Because when you look at it, I mean, with the loss of Tim Hardaway Jr., who was a full-time starter for them, if it's a 1-for-1 shift in that, then you would have him assume that role. And especially if you're trying to space the floor. Because in those cases, you would have Asar Thompson slide down to the bench. If you want your defensive lineup in, you're probably not going to have Duncan Robinson on the court there. But, there are ways they can play around with this. I'm sure that Bickerstaff will be able to figure this out. He is a great enough coach. So, those kinds of tactics will be flushed out throughout the course of not only this offseason, but in the regular season too. Things can change in real time as you're undergoing a full 82 game season. It's not all going to be a sort of straight line path to success. The Clippers would waive Drew Eubanks, which makes sense. You're trying to build for the future, and you have very great starters and now a bench piece in Brook Lopez. There wouldn't be room for Drew Eubanks in that offense. He's just not really been a good center at all, and especially when you compare, he is not a good enough player to stack up to either of those two. So you can afford to move on from him with relative ease. The Knicks would officially sign Jordan Clarkson. This was in the works since free agency started and the Jazz bought him out. I did want to wait for the language to change around a little bit, because even then, even with them saying that, he's expected to do so, you can never be too sure in this day and age, but they made it official yesterday. And it's a good move for the Knicks. It gives them a great bench piece to deploy in games where they need that spark. They couldn't really do it all last season. Thibodeau refused to do it. And by the time the playoffs got here, that entire bench unit just did not know how to come together and put together good enough runs on the court to at least aid the Knicks in sustaining quality leads and potential wins in ball games. Jordan Clarkson comes in and is immediately the sixth man, unquestioned. As good as Miles McBride can be, he's not a good initiator of offense. He does try, but he is mostly a spot-up shooter. Cameron Payne is just not efficient enough to be the ball handler and potential facilitator for that second unit. And that's been proven time and again whenever he's on the court. Jordan Clarkson has the perfect blend and is a much more refined player at this stage of his career, to where even though his numbers might drop a little bit, he's still going to provide you with at least 14 points per game on pretty good shooting for a bench player in this day and age. And if the Knicks can have that added element to their game, it provides Jalen Brunson, a player who is going to acquire a good amount of wear and tear with his physical style of basketball. You provide him with a good amount of rest, especially during the regular season. Not every single game for the Knicks is going to be truly competitive. They're going to have games where they dominate the other team. If you can find those moments during the regular season to conserve Jalen Brunson as much as possible en route to a potential playoff run where he's fully fresh and ready to go at full strength and health, that just tremendously helps that entire team out. The Hornets would re-sign Tre Mann to a 3-year, $24 million deal. Tre Mann is honestly in an interesting spot. He has been a pretty good role player for them over the past few years, and it was looking like in the regular season, especially with what I'm seeing here on this basketball reference page of his, he was on pace to have, by far, the best season of his career. He, in 13 games off the bench as the sixth man, I would suppose, he averaged 14.1 points per game on 43.5% shooting from the field and 40% shooting from deep also averaging 90.5% shooting at the stripe. That is good all-around play for a player of his caliber, who is still pretty young, by the way. He is only 24 years old, so he could be primed for this position for a long time. Unfortunately, though, he did suffer an injury that kept him out for the rest of the season after this. And in turn, you saw guys like Nick Smith Jr. and others like Vasilije Micic even try to take the mantle in that role. And honestly, Nick Smith Jr. did carve out some solid games for himself, but he'd probably be paired up alongside Tre Mann in this case. And you certainly wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, both of them have shown, at least Nick Smith Jr. in this role, is very capable of playing either guard position and being able to facilitate offense from either one. Tre Mann looks to be a little more of a scorer. And honestly, with what he did for Media Day, putting on the fucking baggy shorts and throwing it back to the 2000s, you can imagine that he's probably got that mindset just flowing all through his mind right now. And as the regular season for this year will get underway as well. So, it is a fine move for the Hornets to keep him. It's a very minimal contract, and to just shore up on at least some form of a backup plan in case LaMelo Ball has to miss time is perfect and ideal for your situation. You want to see LaMelo Ball as healthy as he can be, obviously, but it doesn't hurt to be prepared for moments that he might miss. And Tre Mann is a player who has now proven that he can assume that role if necessary. The Suns will waive Cody Martin. They thought he was going to be at least a solid player for them, and he only turned out to be part of the problem. They brought him in for shooting and defense, and he did not make good on his end and promise in either capacity. In either one. I mean, at the trade deadline, they thought that they could give themselves a little push towards playing contention. I mean, the Suns at the time, they were still playing like shit, but they weren't too far outside of the 10th seed. I don't know why they thought, looking back on it, that Cody Martin was going to be that much of a game changer for them. But he did exactly what one would expect, and even then, it was so damn underwhelming that they had no other choice but to just get him off of their payroll. Like, think about this. If that is your core strength to shoot the basketball, how is it that you get just 3.7 points per game on 11.1% shooting from the field? Well, from deep, but still, there's no way. How is it that damn near every shot you're putting up from 3 only hurts your basketball team in that moment? Think about that. 11.1% shooting from the 3-point line. Stop fucking shooting. Is probably what Mike Budenholzer had to tell him on multiple occasions at that point. And even with that, he played just 14 games. I don't believe either that he was hurt. I think they phased him out of the rotation completely. Because if you're going to put up those type of numbers, the team already fucking sucks. And you're making things that much worse. there was no reason why they needed to continue playing him. So it makes sense. And also with some of the wing talent that they've now brought in, you damn sure don't need him anymore. You don't. So I can understand the move. The Knicks earlier have now solved their head coaching problem and ended the search. They would pick up Mike Brown and make him their next head coach in their franchise's history. It's what I would believe to be a good hire. Mike Brown has proven on multiple occasions now that he knows how to turn around basketball teams. I mean, there have been years past on a graphic they displayed where he has boosted the win totals of damn near every team he's been a head coach of. He did it with the Cavs, and he did it with the Kings. In other stops as well, he has managed to be a player's coach, honestly. And I think that's what it really comes down to here. You know, while Tom Thibodeau was a great coach, whenever you have multiple reports of players coming at you with suggestions and you consistently turn them down, that is a problem. That is truly a problem. And Mike Brown will at least take the time out to hear the players out. Now, granted, you know, although this might not have been the reason why he was ousted from Sacramento, the situation with De'Aaron Fox leading up to it leads me to believe that he'll call you out on your shit. And he's certainly been that way even as an assistant coach. He'll call you out on your shit if he needs to. But, you know, he'll take the time out to at least hear what his players have to say and will be willing to try out new things if need be. That's what's most important here. You know, again, like I mentioned, he's boosted win totals damn near every single place he's been at, whether it be with Cleveland, the Lakers in 2011, or the Cavs in 2014, and then the Kings in that fateful 2022 season. Like, if that turnaround rings true, then the Knicks could be in for something very special. Because with these teams, all of them were coming off of reeling seasons and weren't completely established. I mean, yeah, in the Cleveland year, you did have LeBron. The Laker year, you had Kobe at that time, prior to the injury. And in Sacramento, you have solid players there. But the Knicks are solidified with superstar talent and an enormous amount of depth on their team, which wasn't a benefit for Mike Brown in some of his prior stops as the head coach. So they are pre-built as a championship contender. They just needed an individual who can keep players' heads on straight and allow them to fully see through the entire regular season while also ensuring that come playoff time, they are healthy enough and energized enough to go. Mike Brown has never been a coach to overplay his players. He will ensure that they get the rest they need. All of these things will truly help the Knicks here. And he apparently had connections with the upper brass in the Knicks front office as well, and overall organization. So, from that standpoint, it was a perfect fit for them. I would envision that the Knicks could see a little bit of a boost in winning overall, but that's not what's going to matter. It is going to be about how they outlast the brunt of the regular season and progress into a potential championship run next year. That's what it's going to be about. Mike Brown has accomplished a lot, and yet, in a setting like New York City, this is certainly going to be the greatest challenge he's faced. Even after playing, or coaching rather, two of the greatest players of all time in LeBron and Kobe Bryant, even with turning around this King squad to break that dreaded 16-year playoff drought. This is going to be the most difficult task he's had to face. Even with the talent already there. Because at the first sign of something going wrong, you can bet your ass that that fan base will turn. And then whenever things go right again, they'll turn right back. They are ruthless out there. Mike Brown doesn't really seem to care, though. I think he embraces that kind of quality. So we'll see what happens there. In other news, the arena that hosts the matches of the WNBA's Seattle Storm has decided to give statues to two important people in that particular area when it comes to the sports that both were there and used to be there. For the NBA side of things, the Seattle Supersonics, on the behalf of multiple members of that organization, have decided to give a statue to former head coach and player Lenny Wilkens, and the Storm have decided to retire the statue of Sue Bird, or rather give her a statue at this time. Both of those make incredible sense. Lenny Wilkens is obviously one of the greatest players to ever play in the NBA, but he was also known as an exceptional leader, as a coach, and that historic title win in Seattle, even without the team being there over the past 17 years, has nothing but love and respect for him. You felt this was something that was due for the course. And like, this was going to happen in time. They might have waited even a little too long to do it. But at the very least, Lenny Wilkens is still around to potentially, if he wants to, place his sights on it. And Sue Bird as well is obviously regarded as one of the best women's basketball players in history. She is an unquestioned Hall of Famer after a 21-year career. There's just no doubt about it. So to have her statue retired as well, or just not even just have a statue out there outside of the stadium in the first place, is definitely something special. I think they mentioned they're going to unveil it soon, so that's definitely going to be a special moment in time. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.